So I'd like to welcome Todd Curry back to stage, who's going to give us an overview of the Aon Center for Innovation and Analytics. Thank you, Todd.
Great, thanks.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. Morning, everybody. I also want to correct one thing before I start. I had the world's worst introduction of John there. John actually used to do a lot of work when I was at the Boston Consulting Group. He used to advise us, and I would say one of his tricks changed my life, okay, as an analyst. So I will tell him which one it is. You should go to his workshop and discover not just that, but other tricks from him. He's truly a phenomenal data scientist. So I want to talk a little bit today about Aon in the world of analytics. And after doing this, after being a data scientist, a computer scientist, an analyst for 25 years, I've learned a few things that I'd like to pass on. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do, a lot more about how we do it, because I think it's important, certainly to people who are going through kind of the middle phases of their careers or moving into a place where you have an analytics organization, that you really need to focus on the how. Just a little bit of background on the ACIA. So Aon has a center here in Dublin. It's been in place for about 6 years. I took over as CEO 9 months ago. We have 120 technologists, data scientists, and client services people who are dedicated to finding insights from our data. Actually, I have that in slides, so forgive me here. I'll talk about it in 1 second. So a lot of things in this world of data science are changing. Technology is very disruptive. Two companies that come to mind that we actually consider as kindred spirits, that this might be surprising to you. Uber, world's largest taxi company, doesn't own a car. Airbnb, world's largest hotel company, doesn't own a single room. Aon is the largest insurance company in the world, and yet we don't write a single insurance policy. We started off on this mission roughly 20 years ago, and I wish we would have the valuation that Uber and Airbnb have or will have on a PE basis. But in all honesty, this is what we do every day. 25% of the world's insurance premium, 80 trillion in insurance limits is actually more than the gross world product. So to say we're big, yes, we're big. But a lot of people would look at insurance and say it's really boring. Come on, this is something that, I buy my car insurance policy. This is, pretty standard stuff. We have here in Dublin a center, full of people who are dedicated to ingesting new forms of data to find new insights, doing really complex analysis. And frankly, the challenges are pretty great when you're in a mature industry like this. If we string together a dozen 3% improvements, it actually has a demonstrable impact on our bottom line because it's such a large base. So we are very focused on that and very focused on making everyone in our ecosystem more productive. It's really why our center exists. Ideally, in a center like ours, you would just do cool stuff, right? And as a data scientist, we all love to try new techniques, new models. The truth is, though, that we oftentimes have to do some other things for the mere mortals. People who think kurtosis is a skin condition. Anyone who laughed is a statistician, and so we'll talk after. It's just recruiting side. But, we have to do things like reports. We have to generate dashboards for people, and that means we have to focus on the how, like how we limit. If in your perfect world, you'd spend everything on the cool stuff and less on the boring. So how do you balance those things out? Most of our cool stuff, frankly, is an answer to real commercial problems. And some of these I can talk about. Some of these that I've got for you today are some of the things that frankly drive us crazy. So most of our data entry today is manual. We have 22,000 brokers and account executives around the world who key in data. Oftentimes they're doing this when they're updating a sales pipeline or telling us about a new product that a customer has bought. Where humans are involved, you have error. So what we put together was some machine learning to develop rules to detect spurious data values. So if one of you were buying a car insurance policy and you put the value of the car as $10 billion, that's a heck of a gold-plated DeLorean. We probably want to double-check that. And for us, oftentimes it would take 45 days to be able to act on the information and error check it. So we made some assumptions around the similarities of policies based on proximity, so nearest neighbors in terms of industry, SIC code, geography, policy limits, a number of things. And we operationalized a random tree forest to basically respond in near real time to brokers. So as they've keyed in $10 trillion, we say, wait a second, it's probably not the right number, would you back up? Obviously for them, taking time out of the equation by doing that in real time is helpful. For us, it was revolutionary. Another one, growing Aon's book of business. I'm actually going to talk about this in example at a couple of places. So we had an industry that was struggling to find prospects. You can see here it's the energy industry, and they were looking for a specific subset of prospects. So anything like a Dun & Bradstreet classification scheme, it just unfortunately did not have two things. One, the specific classifications that they were looking for. Two, it lagged. So we developed a classifier that looked at press releases, looked at annual reports, looked at any kind of stories in local newspapers. We basically looked at any kind of news feed that we thought could be helpful to us. Initially came up with used a bag of words approach, later went to a vectorization approach, and from it we were able to come up with a prospect list. This for us meant basically something that was able to update in real time, in near real time, anytime a story came out, to be able to flag our energy team to say, hey, here's a company you might be interested in. There's some limits around this, and I'll talk about those in just a second, but for us it was truly a flashlight in the dark. With it, we put together a tool. This is something we've mocked up the data here a little bit just to hide things for you, but it's a dashboard now for them. So we took cool thing, actually and made it into a dashboard. Back to the how. So as an organization, we have to prioritize. It's just a sad fact. ROI and return on time have become the tools that we use to get very, very picky about what we do. And I thought in this next section that I would give you some advice on how we do it. Part of this is, I would say, too, to avoid some of the things that just drive us crazy. So it's my job, basically, to have all these guys from Aon who are in blue T-shirts be driven less crazy by things like distraction, by never-ending projects. So you'll see some of these traps, and we'll talk about them. Number one, absolutely my least favorite of all, baton death marches. Projects in search of the great white whale, projects where you don't know the definition of done, right? These are all too often a reality in the analytics organization. For us, the first thing we do, frankly, is we time box any new analytics effort. So we understand fully what the problem is, and we say, we will run hard against this, but then we will stop. So what can we accomplish in 2 weeks? How good is the data? Let's test it. How good are some very basic models? Let's test and see. Do we think we can use more complex models to get better answers? Let's find out. Only by time boxing it, frankly, can we avoid the fear that we've run into a baton death march. And as I express here, we ask at the end of this effort, do we think the view will be worth the climb? The truth is, as an organization, you get very good at knowing sort of when you'll finish the Sudoku puzzle that is an analytics problem. 2, perfection instead of progress. I see some heads nodding. I mean, we have a number of organizations that we interface with who will accept nothing less than a perfect answer. And we really have gotten pretty good at saying, why won't an imperfect answer do? I'll go back to that energy example I spoke of just a few minutes ago. The client in that case said, well, you've given us a list of prospects, but only 50% of them are good prospects. And so we paused and said, we've given you, a flashlight, not only a flashlight, a spotlight in the dark. The other names that are no good, you can throw out. You can verify in a few seconds that you can throw them out. The 50% are actually quite good. So that's as good as we're going to give you. We're not going to spend effort to straighten up that Leaning Tower of Pisa. We're just not going to do it. And I think going back to John's example, with the IRS earned income tax credit fraud example, 25% might just be good enough. It's imperfect. You'd love to have 100%. I mean, wouldn't that be great? No type 1, no type 2 error. That'd be a perfect confusion matrix. Not going to happen. So being able to train your customers a bit to say, you may just have to make do is part of our routine. Big scope projects where you truly are biting off more than you can chew. Go back to, if you can time box, that's great, but at some point, when you're focusing on something really, really big, you get into a situation where you are in a world of project management, where effectively your whole organization is going to be caught up. Now for us, the solution here was agile. So as I came in, I discovered, taking over, that our IT organization was really pretty happy that they had moved to Agile Scrum and had a very good framework, very good working model for holding each other accountable to solve bite-sized problems, for communicating amongst each other how things were going. And I talked with my CIO and said, if I can use an analogy, and they may hate me for this later, I'll find out. You have very happy, productive ants. They are just marching along and doing great stuff, whereas we, the business users, are a bunch of dumb grasshoppers. We hop around from project to project, and we don't know what we're doing. So should we really have a two-class system in an analytics center? Should we have the technologists, and in some cases our analytics people, working along on bite-sized chunks? No. Whilst our business users jump around from idea to idea, the answer for us was no. We became agile, and as a center now are 100% agile, which means every single group, even marketing, HR, are using either Agile Scrum or Kanban to manage their efforts. No two-class system, and I think for us it's been transformational. Creating dependency. This is, I call it the curse of the capable. How many people are IT support for their extended family, right? We solve problems. That's what we do. So as a result, you create a lot of mouths to feed. People who say, hey, couldn't you just give me a scatter chart? You're so good at that. I'd love it if you just run a quick regression on this sparse data set. What we've done is say, no, we need to teach people how to fish. So we will take on the industrial strength problems in bite-sized ways, but we'll absolutely teach our extended user base to fish with tools like Alteryx and Tableau, which for us have been transformational. When I was at Boston Consulting Group, we had roughly half the firm take on Alteryx and start using it over a 2-year time period. And we actually started curating the code for some of our key practice areas. We kept our library of pricing tools in a repository that were curated by people who could then say, Bob, you've done some great work with the tool we gave you. We'd like to incorporate those changes back into our model set. And could, as new people were coming on, hand out these models with videos to explain how to do it. Tableau, obviously, is I think for us also transformative. For us, we had, I'd say, prior administration said yes to everything. It goes back to the power of, the disruptive power of distraction. This as an organization means everybody has got 6 or 8 different hats on. For us, the solution was really to use a stage gate approach. Now, if you research stage gate, Clayton Christensen has spoken quite a bit about some of the challenges, and I would agree that used badly, these can be weapons for destruction. So a couple of caveats. We look at every project that comes our way by doing what we call a first look. So a couple of junior analysts will spend a few hours to really look at the merits of any individual project. Are the data available? We can't do anything unless data are available. How good is the quality? How important do we think this project is for our overall business? Back to our notion of lifting the fortunes of Aon, we really have to look hard at the merits. But we give everything a first look, and then heeding Professor Christensen's advice, we have a very low bar. So almost everything makes it into second look. In second look, we take a bigger team, and we spend a bit more time proposing approaches, teasing out some of the idiosyncrasies that we think could hurt us, really getting a sense of whether the people who are promising us that our work could change their world are actually going to be able to stand up and be held accountable for those estimates. So there's nothing more powerful than telling a customer, you say this is worth $10 million, can I tell your boss to book that in next year's budget? You get a lot of hemming and hawing when you put that kind of notion to them. So what I'd say about this implementation, though, for us has been that there's a caveat. Some of the people who are your friends really love it when you do great work, back to the dependency, will be unhappy that some of their projects are left behind. I'd say we as an organization have been facing this. We went from an organization that said yes to a lot of things and had a lot of good ideas coming in, but a lot of things that were distracting us. As we have put this model in place, we've had our bit of teething pain. So, word to the wise. Lastly, the thing I'll close with here is that I think you saw it very clearly in John's presentation. Packaging is important. I'm a guy who loves to just see the model, see the residuals, and can understand, yep, that worked or didn't. Most of the customers of our analytics are not so sophisticated. We really, as an organization, have been working hard to come up with better ways to package things. New forms of visualization are great. We often sort of blend a mixture of classic, line graphs and scatter charts with more sexy 3D visualizations, and that's great so long as it's buying you acceptance. So long as your clients are really saying, I understand it. I feel like you have shown me that you understand the problem fully and have shown me how this fits. So I'll share with you guys one equation that when it was first given to me, I found it very cloying. It was from a guy who couldn't spell kurtosis. It was said in an offhanded way to just indicate to me that I perhaps had not listened. And over the past 20 years, I have to say this very simple formula has, of course, he was right. I was too proud to admit it. But this formula has stuck with me, which is just the quality of your work times the acceptance that you engender, right, through your efforts, through your actions, really does equal the excellence of your results. We as an organization and that analytics organization struggle to get this simple equation right, but we endeavor to get it right every time, and we're working constantly to improve not only the quality of our efforts, but often, as is this point, the acceptance of our work. I believe that is it. So thank you very much.